To all the moms of children who are still at home or all grown up, moms who've outlived a son or daughter, or moms of babies they never got to hold, moms who've raised kids all on their own or became a mom to someone who needed one, moms of children who have wandered from God, or the longing to be moms who are still waiting. God perfectly arranged each of you into the role you have today. His word recognizes you as capable, strong, and praiseworthy. Everything you do makes our lives more beautiful. Happy Mother's Day.
Well, this morning for Mother's Day, we have a special guest speaker. Her name is Shari King. She and her husband have an incredible ministry in South Carolina. She is an author, a speaker, a host of a great podcast. Please welcome to the stage this morning with me, Miss Shari King.
It's hard to do all the things. Step up the stairs, carry my stuff, and make sure I don't bust in these heels, right? These pants are really long, and I'm a short person, and so when the skinny jeans, apparently they're going out of style now. What's happening with that? And I really love the skinny jean thing because I never had to hem my pants, but these are long, so I'm wearing these heels, and it's hard coming up the stairs. I appreciate so much being with you today. Again, my name is Shari King. I am from South Carolina, originally from Atlanta. Anyone from Atlanta? No. Okay, well, I liked Atlanta for many reasons, but it is really big now, and so I'm glad I don't live there full time. The traffic pretty much, you could just sit in traffic all day and waste your day away. But I live in South Carolina now, kind of near Greenville. Anyone know the Greenville area of South Carolina? Yes, one person. Okay, so Greenville's a great place to live, and my friend Shauna came and traveled with me today, so she's my other South Carolinian in the room. I love Clemson. I don't know if that makes me an enemy to any of you, but I moved to South Carolina about 6 years ago, and my boys love football. I was a soccer player, so football for me, I didn't really understand the whole football thing until my son started playing when he was like 5. And when they play when they're 5, the helmets are so big that they just fall over all the time and can't get up, and the coaches pretty much go around the field and just start pulling all the kids up and putting them in place. Then they fall and see a flower, chase a butterfly, and you just kind of laugh. So that's how I started learning a little bit more about football, but I am definitely a fan now. I want to show you my family. This is my family. We have a picture here. This is my 18-year-old. He's a senior about to graduate. His name is Jacob. He's probably saying something sarcastic. I'm not really sure what's going on in this picture, but I'm laughing. So this is my husband, Clayton. And then the last one on the left is Joseph. We call him Jojo. And he is the youngest, 15, but I'm really glad he's the tallest because I would say he's the more quiet-spoken of our whole family. And he pretty much now is dominating in height. So I'm cheering for him to be taller than everyone by like 5 inches or something. So that's my family. I love them. I thank you so much for having me here today. I found out that your church's name is Grace Fellowship, and I love any church name that has grace in the title because grace has been a theme of my life. Ironically, my name means grace. My first name means grace. My second name also means grace. So I think that somehow the Lord just knew in the mix of it all, I needed a lot of grace in my life. And maybe that's because I'm really hard on myself. Do I have any like type A performance people here? Yeah. Well, here's the deal. When you're a mom and you're a type A, you can punish yourself all day. It's really hard. So I have 2 kids, and I never actually, when I was in college, thought that maybe I wouldn't ever get married. I thought maybe I wouldn't ever be a mom. And the reason for that, I think, was I felt called to ministry at 12. Now, when you're 12, you don't really know what that means, but I did feel that God had called me into a relationship with him where I served him with my career. That doesn't mean that you're any greater than anyone else. It just means that that's your path and your calling, and you can't let go of it. And so when I was a senior in college, I thought that might mean that I was be a missionary either to Russia or to China. I was looking at those two options. And I didn't know that I thought family could work simply because I had been in and out of so many families in my childhood. I love my mom and I love my dad. My mom worked really hard. She was very selfless, raising my brother and I. But I think for me, there was something feeling like maybe I couldn't make it work. Maybe I couldn't make a marriage last. Maybe I couldn't do well as a mom. And so I just kind of let that dream die and just thought, well, I'm just going to be single for the rest of my life and serve the Lord and be married to him, whatever that means. I read some books from some women who became missionaries, and they said that was their calling from the Lord, and I thought maybe that's me too. And I'll tell you how that kind of stopped for me. I went on a mission trip when I was a junior in college, and I came back, and my apartment was not finished, so I had nowhere to live. And my campus pastor and his wife said, why don't you come and live with us? And they didn't have an extra room. It wasn't ideal for a college student. I actually lived on the floor of their daughter's room. We would pull out a mattress from under her bed, and I would just sleep on that every night. She was in elementary school. And it was kind of funny. I had 1/8 of a closet of space, and probably most college students would say this isn't really my best life right now. But there were things that happened living in that home, seeds that were planted that I needed. And I needed a mentor at that time in my life. I needed a mother figure. And so they provided that for me. And I ended up having this hope and dream that maybe one day I would also be married and maybe also have children. So that did happen. I met my husband at the end of my senior year. He says this, when he first saw me, he fell in love and knew I was his wife. The hard thing is that that's not how I felt when we first met. And it isn't because he's not awesome, because he is. It was just I wasn't in that place in my life. I was healing from a previous relationship, and I just didn't think I should just jump in and go. And so I prayed for a long time, and Clayton kept pursuing me, and so we ended up getting married. He hired me. This is a really awesome story. He was speaking at an event, and he said he needed a rock climbing instructor to work at his camp. That was the last position that he needed. Well, you guys probably don't know this, but I'm a rec major. I was actually teaching rock climbing, caving, and whitewater rafting at the time. And so when he got done with his message, I walked up to him, and I was like, hey, I was not trying to get the job. I kind of felt like God wanted me to ask him, but then I kind of wanted him to say no, because it was a 3-week job in the middle of the summer, and I needed something like a real job that paid all summer because I was graduating. So I just walked up to him. I didn't say my name. I didn't say great sermon. I just said, hey, do you still need a rock climber instructor? And he said, yes. He was nervous, apparently. He said, yes, we need people, but probably not you, because we need people in skill positions. And I don't know how you're wired, but that made me mad. And I'm like, okay, well, let me tell you my skills, ... and started listing them off. And he realized he had blundered, and he said, okay, I'm sorry, you're hired. And so that's kind of how we met. A few years later, we had children. And that was a joy and a hard time for me. So everyone has a different journey in motherhood. Motherhood, that word alone, brings a lot of feelings, different ones, to a lot of different people. And here's what's hard about speaking to women in general. We have so many different roles. Some women are working moms. Some women are not working moms. Some women are moms, and some women are trying to be moms, and that's a struggle. There's so many different facets to females, and how do you speak about motherhood to an audience of women when there's so many different women out there, and so many different kinds of moms too. I have a different background than many of you do. I'm from a different place. I have a different story. I probably raised my kids differently because I have a different husband than you, and we have a different dynamic, and our kids are all different. And so we have to realize that motherhood is complex simply because there's just a lot of different kinds of moms, a lot of different kinds of kids, a lot of different kinds of dads, a lot of different kinds of families. Some are together, some are not anymore. And so there's dynamics that go into motherhood that can bring up joy and pain. And so I want to talk a little bit about that today, but specifically, I want to speak about why motherhood matters. Because I think that sometimes we can get lost in the mix and really feel like motherhood is something that doesn't matter. You do a lot of things as a mom that people don't really see. And you don't really get credit. It's not like, I remember when my first son was born, I served him all day, And I would rock him in the rocking chair, and I would think to myself, it would be great if you could just open your mouth and just one time say thanks. You're not even saying, hey, mom. His first word was dada. I'm like, hello, who's giving you more time and more of their body? Me, I'm giving you all of me, And so it can be kind of this thankless job that you're trying to do so well, and there's so much pressure. I just remember the pressure that I felt was I'm having a human, and somehow I'm hoping this human will also love God in the way that I love God and will follow him. And will my child love Jesus? Will my child accept him as Lord? Will my child make good decisions? And we can't control our kids. And that's so hard. And when we try, usually they surprise us and do something else, When I was a mom, I remember right when I figured out a discipline tactic and it seemed like it was working, all of a sudden something changed and it stopped working. And I'm like, what? I have to do something else now? I had it down. So it can be very confusing. And I don't know what your motherhood journey has looked like, but for me, I have had to learn how to love being a mom. I'm going to tell you guys a story. So when my husband and I first got married, we traveled a lot. He started preaching when he was 14, which sounds really young, and it was. He felt called to preach, and he had a pastor that trusted to give him the opportunity to start preaching when he was young. And he did this because he wanted Clayton to have a safe place to start. So he started very young. So by the time we met, he was traveling a lot. The first 2 years we were married, we were traveling over 300 days a year. So we weren't home. We had a home. We had payments. We had insurance, all those things. We had bills, but we really weren't there. And we had someone living in our house to take care of it while we were gone, but we were in and out all the time. Well, we thought when we had our first son that we would slow down, and we thought we'd slowed down enough. You can't really cancel events when you realize you didn't slow down enough, and so you just have to strap on and pull up your bootstraps. Y'all are in Texas, right? You pull up your bootstraps and you get to working. Is that it? Okay. I said that one time, pull up your bootstraps and get working, and nobody knew what I was talking about. I'm like, I think I'm too much in the city right now, but here we're good with that, right? Y'all get it? Okay. So you pull up your bootstraps and you get to work and you just decide, I overcommitted and we just got to work this thing out right now and we need to look at our calendar for next year. Well, here is an awesome story of my initiation into motherhood. My first son is born. I stayed home for this event. It wasn't worth me going at that point. But my husband calls me, he's on the way home from the airport. Literally, he was going to get home, be home for 10 minutes, enough time to go to the bathroom, pack his bag, and leave. He calls me and he says, I'll be home 10 minutes. We're there, we're leaving, get ready. Not a long conversation, just basically he's saying, have all the bags packed and the child ready, So I'm upstairs trying to change Jacob's diaper. And I'm packing his bag, making sure we have all the things that you need when you have a baby. Oh my gosh. Our car is so not full right now. All the things you think you need when they're little, you have to shove in your car. So I'm trying to make this mental list, put it all by the door so that when he gets here, he can put it in. And I hear a knock on the door. And I'm like, okay, UPS is here. They can just leave the package. And so I keep getting Jacob ready. Well, there's another knock. There's like 5 different doorbell rings. And I'm like, man, this is not UPS unless they're just really desperate to give this package to me. So I walk down the stairs. I leave Jacob in the crib. I walk down the stairs and I open the door and there's this panicked woman standing in front of me. And this is all she says, "Did you see that?" And I'm like, hello, my name is, I realized she was my neighbor. And I said, "What is it that you want me to look at?" So I walk out and I look in the yard and I realize there's a dead cat in the yard. And I'm like, oh gosh. I'm like putting 2 and 2 together and I'm realizing this is her cat. She's like, "Did you even see this happen? Your dog killed my cat." And I said, here's the deal. I'm living on 7 acres, which for us is a lot. For you guys who have like 1 million cows, I know it's not a lot, but for us, 7 acres, I don't see my neighbor every day, every time I drive in. And so she's standing there and she has her cat in the yard and she's like, "Did you see this?" "No, I didn't see it. I was at home alone last night with a baby and I heard my dog barking." Well, our dog used to tree raccoons. I'm not getting in a tree with a raccoon. I mean, there are many things I will do, but I'm not climbing up a tree to rescue a raccoon or really any animal that's scared. And so when she says, "Did you see that?" I'm like, I just know. "I'm sorry, I didn't know your cat was there." And she said, "Well, that's my cat and your dog killed it. And why couldn't you tell me?" And I said, "Well, number 1, I didn't know it was your cat. Number 2, I'm scared of cats that are mad. And number 3, they make my throat close up because I'm allergic." So I didn't mean to be mean to her, but I was just panicked. My son starts crying upstairs because he's alone. My husband's about to come and get me, and he doesn't like being late. And so all these things are going through my head, and that's the only thing that came out. And so I said, "I'm sorry, what can I do for you?" I wanted to offer her money, but I didn't know if that would be offensive. There's all these things. And so she says, "Well, can I at least have a box?" And I thought, yes, I have a box. So I run up the stairs. I pour out all the diapers. Jacob's screaming in the crib. I'm not going to mess with him. I'm just trying to get this lady the box. I throw the diapers out of the box. I take the box down to her. I'm like, "Is this good?" And so she puts her cat in the box and sadly walks away. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what motherhood is like. It's when all the things come piling in and I feel like everything comes at you and you're just sitting here going, fruits of the Spirit, what were those things? I mean, am I able to do that right now? And you just wonder if you can be godly enough or loving enough. There's so many expectations, I think, that we place on ourselves as moms. And then you get the magazines that tell you all the 12 steps of all the things that you're supposed to be doing. And when you read them, you just kind of wonder if you can even make one of them happen, So motherhood can be one of these really intimidating places to be. But there's so much joy in it, I feel like, if we can just take a step back and realize that the expectations of the Lord aren't on us to do all things right in performance. But I just really have learned that it's about me learning who I am and who I'm becoming as a person. And then as I learn who I'm becoming, I also watch my children and help them to become exactly who it is that they're meant to become. I study my kids. I get to know their personalities. I realize we have differences and we have similarities, but we're not going to think the same way. We're not going to love the same things. I live in a house of boys. I'm the only girl. No one in my house puts makeup on or does their hair. They're all just boys that wear shorts. That until, my son yesterday, I saw him outside. He was wearing shorts. I keep telling him to go get some new ones. And he had split the back of them when he was working out at the gym. And I'm like, "I told you to get new ones. I can see your underwear." And so this is just how I feel like it is living with boys. We're just so different. Why would he not buy shorts before they split? I don't know. And so motherhood is just different for all people. Some have daughters, some don't. Some have all sons, some don't. Some have mothers and some have daughters and sons. And you never know what you're going to get or who you need to be in that moment. My hardest time with motherhood was when I realized that I had postpartum after my first son's birth. And I didn't even know I had it until my husband asked me one day. He said, look, Shari, you're not the kind of person that you're saying you are. You're very hard on yourself, and you don't think you're being a good mom, but you are a good mom. And he would say things to me that I just couldn't believe. I didn't believe that I could do it. I saw other moms that seemed like they loved being moms, and I thought something was wrong with me. That's all I could say over and over again is something wrong with me. Why don't I love doing this the way I'm supposed to? And so one day he just said, I think you might be depressed. I think you might have postpartum. And so I literally had to find a counselor, and I drove 45 minutes 3 times a week with a newborn to go to counseling, newborn, 9 months, to go to counseling so that I could get better, so that I could learn how to think and see things the way that other people saw it instead of me. Motherhood's not like that for everyone, but the thing that I learned from my postpartum, the thing that I learned from my depression, is that I didn't really understand grace until I came to the end of me. Until I realized that I couldn't perform to make my kid love me. I couldn't perform to make God think I was a good mom. I couldn't perform and get stars on a chart like I did when I was a kid. I remember when I was in elementary school, if I just got straight A's, my mom would go buy me a prize, and that seemed so easy. Motherhood's not like that. You can't chart your kid's progress sometimes because you pour and you pour and you give, and then you wonder and you wonder and you hope and you hope. But I do believe there are glimpses of beauty along the way. And there are times that are just beautiful, like when my husband's dad died. We were all in the car, and my husband was crying. He was grieving. And my 2 sons reached up to the front of our car, and they put their hands on my husband, and they prayed for him because they realized he was hurting. There is beauty in being a mom. There's beauty in being a parent. But there is also great sacrifice that I think is hard to measure until you're in the middle of it. And until you actually start looking and seeing all the ways that you're pouring out. One thing that my husband and I did when we first got married is we decided, because I had a hard time measuring my motherhood and deciding if I was doing well enough. I felt like I compared myself to my husband, who was accomplishing all these things, came home with all these, like I've written 15 million books, and I spoke to 1 trillion people, and they all got saved today, the whole audience, I'm like, well, today I changed 15 diapers, and I got thrown up one, and pretty much I just wash my clothes and keep all the shirts there so that I could just take one off and put a new one on, and this is my life now. Sorry if I smell like milk, And so that's how it can feel sometimes. So we sat down and literally made a list of how much would it cost for us to hire a full-time cook? How much would it cost for us to hire a full-time person to clean our house and do laundry? How much would it cost for us to do all of these things? And once we added it all up, my salary was higher than his. And I was like, bang, boom, I got it, It made me feel so good. And look, it's hard sometimes to feel valued as a mom, but when you can kind of just get that little encouragement along the way, and even your husband realizes, even like if they need to see the money, like the bottom line, the total of what you're doing, that's a great strategy. And so we would joke about that afterwards. And one thing I've learned about motherhood is just, it feels a lot like shepherding and discipling other people. And recently I was, I'm in seminary right now. I'm getting my master's of divinity and maybe a PhD. I don't know if I have what it takes to get there, but we'll see. And so I'm taking these classes because I want to learn. I want to be faithful in what I teach. I want to be faithful in who I am and how I live. And so I just finished my a semester of Greek. Now, Greek is absolutely impossible. I translated the book of Thessalonians, 1 Thessalonians. I'm not saying I did it all right. Pretty much a lot of it I got wrong, but I tried. I tried really hard, and what I've learned from translating Scripture is that you have to take each word And when you look at each word, you have to decide where it fits in the puzzle. How do the words go together? And how do they combine with one another? What is the meaning behind how they connect? And the reason that I say this to you this morning is that I believe by spending so much time on each individual verse, it allowed me to get to know Paul in a way that I had never known him before. Before I took this semester, and I would say probably 8 years ago, I really just thought Paul was just one of these guys that just went out there and said mean things to everyone and just was like, I'm going to tell you how it is, and if you don't like it, too bad. This semester, when I was reading Thessalonians, I saw his heart. I saw Paul's heart for the church. I saw who he was and how much he agonized. He went to Thessalonica and he created a church there. He built a group of people that he was discipling, and he loved them so much. This is motherhood. Hello, people. It's okay. I totally get it. You can't control crying. And so he loved the church. And he was sad when he had to leave. He didn't want to leave the church. He didn't want to abandon them, but he left so that they wouldn't be persecuted anymore. And so he left and he went to another place, but he was still concerned for them. And so he sent his partner, Timothy, to go check on the church and see how the church was doing. He was praying for them day and night, hoping that they would be okay. And I felt like when I was listening to Paul's heart, it's how I feel about my kids, and especially in my stage right now. My kids are teenagers. They're becoming their own people. We've kind of exited the whole, I'm going to help my kids and form them and teach them who they are. Now I'm in the whole I'm coaching you season. Maybe you'll listen to me, maybe you won't, but you're going to end up making your own choices. And I'm hoping and praying that the choices they make are the ones that would please the Lord. But I can't control that. And so Paul went into Thessalonica and he poured into the church. He hoped that they would survive in a world that didn't believe in Christ. All around them, they had persecution. Paul had to leave and he's wondering how they are. And Timothy comes back after visiting and he tells Paul they're doing great. This church is doing great. They've listened to what you said. They're being obedient, but it's hard for them. They have people come in and teaching them false doctrines, but they're sticking to it. And so Paul decides to write them a letter telling them how proud he is, how much he misses them, how much he longs for them, and how much he can't wait until they all are in the presence of God and they've all finished this race. And when I read that, when I translated that this semester, I realized that Paul's heart is the same heart that I have for my kids. He speaks to them in a way that I speak to my kids, and I realized that motherhood is just really a lot like shepherding. Motherhood is a lot like shepherding. So I want to read the scripture this morning from 1 Thessalonians 2, 1 through 13. It says, "For you yourselves know, brothers, that our coming to you was not in vain. But though we had already suffered and been shamefully treated at Philippi, as you know, we had boldness in our God to declare to you the gospel in the midst of much conflict. For our appeal does not spring from error or impurity or any attempt to deceive. But just as we've been approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel, so we speak, not to please man, but to please God who tests our hearts. For we never came with words of flattery, as you know, nor with a pretext for greed. God is our witness. Nor did we seek glory from people, whether from you or others, though we could have made demands as apostles of Christ, but we were gentle among you, like a nursing mother taking care of her children. So being affectionately desirous of you, we were ready to share with you not only the gospel of God, but of ourselves too, because you had become very dear to us. For you remember, brothers, our labor and toil. We worked day and night that we might not be a burden to you. We proclaimed to you the gospel of God. You are witnesses, and God also, of how holy and righteous and blameless our conduct toward you as believers. For you know how, like a father with his children, we exhorted each one of you and encouraged you and charged you to walk in a manner worthy of God. God calls you into his own kingdom and glory. And we also thank God constantly for this, that when you received the word, which you heard from us, you accepted it not as the word of men, but what it really is, the word of God, which is at work in you. So here's what I hear. When I read this scripture, here's what I hear Paul saying. He says he was entrusted with the gospel. He says he spoke not to please men, but God. He says he didn't seek his own glory. He was gentle and affectionate like a mother with her child. He labored day and night. He shared the gospel and himself. He was righteous and blameless. He exhorted them to live a life worthy of God, and he thanked God for their reception of the word. So here's what I realize, that being a mom is a lot like being a shepherd. When I read that these are the things that Paul said, I realize that being a mom is just like being a shepherd. We are giving these children, and we do a lot of the same things that Paul is doing with this church. God has entrusted us as moms with the gospel. That is a huge responsibility. I mean, we are ambassadors of God to our children. There's no higher calling than that. It's an intimidating calling for sure, but we're not alone in how we share that gospel. God is with us. I am to raise my kids in a way which pleases God, not others. That's one of the hardest things I've ever done. I remember one time I went into Target, and I had not even gone shopping since I had my son. I go into Target. The only thing I'm getting is formula, burp medicine, and a nursing bra. Hello, sorry I said nursing bra, but that's what I was getting. And so I'm trying on this nursing bra. Jacob starts crying. I'm getting anxious. And in the other stall next to me, this woman says, "Hi, Mommy, I'm hungry. Feed me." And I'm like, "Are you serious right now? Like, are you serious?" We have to turn those judgments off, and we have to realize we are raising our kids in a way that pleases God, not others. We have to be have our vision set on what God has called us to do and who he wants us to be and who our children are and how we can serve him best with them. My heart is healthier if I'm not seeking my own glory, just like Paul did not seek his own glory. I am to be gentle and affectionate with my kids. I can also be a disciplinarian also. I am meant to share the gospel, but also myself. And I know you guys know someone else who did that. Jesus Christ laid down his life so that we could all be saved. This is a high calling, this calling to motherhood. I often have labored day and night. I'm doing my best to be righteous and blameless. And why is this? So that I can live a life where I'm living out what I'm speaking. What I'm saying, I live. I can't control what my children do. I can't control the choices that they make now that they're becoming their own people. I can be by their side, but if they see my consistent life, I'm hoping that they will love Jesus more. My husband and I are to encourage our kids in a manner worthy of God. And finally, I'm to thank God for all he does. The reality is, motherhood is just a gift. It's like a service that we just continually, I feel like I always just have to give it to the Lord and say, I don't know if I'm doing this right, but can you make something happen from it? Can you take the fruits of my labors and plant seeds and have them grow? Because there is so much I can't do in the souls of my children. A couple of weeks ago, we went on spring break, and we didn't get to do anything big or fancy. We actually visited my college town, and it's kind of funny because they brought 3 of their friends, and we did a tour of my college campus, and I was like, this is where I went to school. This is where I drank coffee. I'm sitting here thinking their kids think we're the biggest dorks ever. Like, this is our family vacation, is tours of their parents' college universities. But one thing that we got to do was visit my campus pastor and his wife, who I mentioned earlier. Their names are Kim and Daryl. We sat and had coffee with them. And I cannot tell you how influential their family was for me, because they planted seeds in my life that I never believed that I could be a mom. I never believed that I could be a wife. I didn't know if family lasted. I didn't know if this thing could happen. I needed Kim to be a mother in my life. I needed Daryl to be a father for me, to give me hope in things that I had no hope for. And I was almost like a daughter in a way, because I became very close to their daughter, but we are more like maybe aunt and niece relationship. But we sat there with my kids and with Kim and Daryl, and I spoke these words to Kim and Daryl. I said, I want to thank you because when I lived with you, you gave me hope that this could happen. What you're seeing right here, I'm married because of what you've done in my life. I have kids, I believe, because of the seeds that you planted in my life. I needed you, and you poured into me. And here's how they poured in. I just would help Kim make dinner. I would clean up. I would hang out with her, and then we'd have tea at night and just talk. I watched them fight and make up. I watched a family work. It was the first time I'd really seen it this way ever. And then once I thanked Kim and Daryl through all of my tears and their tears, they turned to my kids. And Daryl spoke into my children. And he looked at my boys and he said, you are on a path to follow God. And I ministered to a lot of college students, and I'm telling you, do not give up. You're pursuing God in a way that many students your age are not doing. You need to keep it up. And he spoke to their friends. So here we are. We have 3 friends who end up hanging at our house all the time. I've got my 2 kids. There's me and my husband, and my spiritual mom and dad pouring into my kids and their friends. We have this guy who comes to our house all the time, pretty much like every day. He's one of Jacob's friends. I just walk in the house, and I usually just see him there. And he said to me one time, he was like, thank you so much for having conversations with me about God. I don't get that at home, and I need it. We sat in my office one time for an hour and a half talking about the book of Hebrews. He had all of these questions. He was reading it and didn't know the answers. God is allowing my husband and I to pour out in the same way that my campus pastor and his wife did to me. And they weren't even my blood relatives. So motherhood can look very different. Yes, it can be biological. Yes, it can be our own children. But very often it can be the people around us who just need someone to listen and be their mom. Sometimes it's my kids' friends. Sometimes it's college students who just come and hang out. We need moms because the role of a mom matters. We can raise people who are not even our own children, and we can have an impact in their lives in a way that we can't even imagine. Clayton and I have had students that have worked at our summer camps come back and tell us how much working for us and being around us and living with us has changed their lives. And really all I was doing was hanging out with them and just giving them hope that God existed and that he's faithful. Like we sang this morning, he is faithful even when we don't feel it. So I wanted to end with a text that my son sent me this morning. Things don't always, you don't always get like the pretty bow on the top of a present. Sometimes your presents can be wrapped in just, you get all the scrap pieces together because you didn't have enough wrapping paper to actually like make it look pretty. And so you're just sticking stuff over it. Sometimes you get the bow. Sometimes you're waiting for the bow and the pretty paper. Things aren't always perfect in motherhood. But I do want to testify to the fact that my son is 18. He was just called into ministry. He loves the Lord. I did my best, and I didn't think I could do it. That's the thing. Like, I don't even know how much I did and how much the Lord just came in beside me and said, I'm going to honor everything that you're doing. All the sacrifices that you're making, I'm going to step in. And I'm going to let your son know that I love him, and he's going to follow me. Well, this morning, he sent me this text. It said, Happy Mother's Day, Mama. I love you so much. You're awesome, and I'm proud of who you are. I could not have asked for a better mom, role model, leader, or shepherd in my life. You've taught me so much. I hope you have the best day ever, and you're going to crush it. He's an 18-year-old boy. Like, what kind of 18-year-old boy sends you this? What kind of teenage sons still give you hugs and tell you they love you? These are gifts that I've gotten to have that I can testify that God has been faithful in our family. So I wanted to just stand up here and give you hope. Look, I'm not perfect. My journey of motherhood hasn't been perfect, but I do believe that God has been faithful in my brokenness. And I wanted to stand up here and tell you guys that motherhood matters, and I feel like moms matter more than we give you the value that you deserve. I want you to know that you do matter. So the last thing, I forgot to actually tell you guys about this. I wrote a book. It took me, usually when people write a book, it takes like a year. It took me like 5 because I put my life on the shelf like a million times for my family or for my husband or for our ministry. This has a lot of motherhood stories in it, but it's really just a book about, it's called I Love You More, Except When I Don't, Fighting to Keep Jesus First. It just kind of talks about places in my life that I didn't realize that I wasn't really giving Jesus my all. And one of them is that story of grace. Like, how do I discover grace in the middle of my brokenness? And so this has some fun mom stories in it, but it also just goes deeper to how do we love Jesus in the places of our heart that we feel like we're kind of guarding and keeping away from him. So I have to leave today because my plane flight changed. And I won't be able to meet a lot of you like I did the first service, and I really wish that I could, but I'm going to have to tap out. But if you are interested in this book, maybe you're a guy and you haven't gotten a Mother's Day gift, hello, here it is. If you want to bless someone or a daughter or, a sister or whatever, they're $15 and they're in the lobby. I wish I could meet you. I wish I could say hi, shake your hand, and sign it. I won't be able to do that today, but feel free to email me and I'll text you my signature. No, just kidding. I don't know. But I want to tell you, I want to thank you for letting me be here today. I hope that this has been an encouragement to you. Motherhood isn't the same for everyone, but I believe it's a beautiful gift that we've been given, and God will definitely produce seeds if we give it to him. Thank you.